Welcome back to this module. So in this module, we are going to build the write a message application. So this will be the final version of the application that we are going to build in this particular module. So when I click on this particular submit button, then you can see it's going to display please enter a message. And after entering the message, if I click on the submit button, then you can see it's going to display the message that your message is delivered, and also it's going to append the content that we have entered inside the input element. So if I enter here different thing like different, and if I click on submit, then you can see different your message is delivered. If I enter here like wow, so if I click on submit, and you can see wow, your message is delivered. So we are going to build this simple application. So on click of the button, whatever content we have added inside the input, it's going to display inside this particular paragraph element. So the next step is we need to start with the HTML part of the project. Now for the saving of the time, I have already created the file inside my Visual Studio Code, and also I linked the style.css and script.js file inside my index.html. And also I run the final version of the application and the version of the application that we want to build, which is a write a message application. Now the first thing is we need to actually create the container. Instead of that, we need to place all the other elements. That is going to be our container element, that is the main container. Then we need to place h2 element, which is used for the heading, then the input type, then button, and then we need to add a paragraph element for displaying the error, which is for the invalid message, and then for the message content, which is this particular one. So let's come back to the index.html and also open the our version of the application. And now inside of the index.html, first I need to create here a container. So it is like container, and inside of that I need to place the h2 element, and inside of the h2 element I'm going to display the heading, which is write a message. Right, and then you can see the heading is actually visible to the browser. After that we need to place the form element. Now the action attribute is not required here, so I'm going to remove the, and then we need to here specify the id, which is actually a form id. And after that here we need to specify the input element, input type. So the type is going to be text, so I'm going to remove here a name. I need an id, so id I'm going to use here for the message. And then also I need to here specify the class, not checked. Actually here we need to use the class, so class is also going to be like message. All right, and then I will be here using the placeholder text, which is enter your message. So I'm going to click on here view and word wrap, so that you can see everything in just only this particular one window. So after adding the form element, so here I'm going to type the button, and after that we need to specify the type of the button. So the type of the button is going to be submit, and then I need to specify the class of the button, which is also going to be submit. All right, and instead of that we need to display the text. So the text that I want to display is actually a submit as well. Now you can see we have also get the button and the input type. So after the form element we need to add two paragraph elements. So make sure you are outside of the form tag, and here we need to add the paragraph element. So the class that I want to display here is for the invalid message, and then the message you can enter here please enter a message, just for the demonstration purpose, because we are going to update the value of this paragraph element dynamically by using the JavaScript code. And also for the correct message we need another paragraph element, which is the class I'm going to specify here like message content. Okay, and I'm going to leave it as empty. Okay, so now all the HTML elements is now placed inside this particular index.html. So the next step is we need to start with the CSS part of the project, which is write a message application. So now it's time to start with the CSS part for the project, which is write a message application. So for that we need to use the style.css file. Inside of this particular style.css file, first I'm going to select the universal selector, and inside of that I'm going to actually use the box sizing to border box, and then I'm going to set the margin to 0 and also padding to 0. Once I did that, then you can see the default styling of the browser is actually changed. Now I'm going to select the body selector. Inside of the body selector, first I'm going to set the display to flex, and then I'm going to say align items to center of the content, and then justify content is also going to be center. Once I did that, then you can see the content is actually shifted to the center of the browser. After that, I'm going to specify here a minimum height, which is going to be 100 vh, which is going to be 100 vh, which is going to be the view height. Then after that, we need to actually align all of these elements to the center. So for that, we need to here use the text alignment property, which will set the content to the center, as you can see right here. And after applying the text align center property, the next property that is actually a font size property, or I can just simply use font family instead of font size. So here I will be using the sans serif font. So now you can see the font of the entire thing is actually changed. And after that, I'm going to here use the background color. So the background color that I will be using here, which is C9, C9, C9. Once I did that, then you can see the background color for the project is actually changed. So that marks the completion of the code for the body element. And after that, I'm going to here select the container. And then inside of the container, I will be providing here padding. So padding is going to be 2 rem units. Okay, and after that, we can't see the working of the padding until and unless we have specified the background color. So first I'm going to specify the background color, which is going to be pure white. If I control save it, now you can see the working of the padding. If I can increase the padding to 3 RAM units, then you can see the size of the container is actually changed. But I will be here using the 2 RAM units. And after that, I will be here providing the border radius property because I want some rounded corners. So that is the reason I will be here using the border radius property. And after applying the border radius property, the next thing is I want some overlay effect. So for that, I will be here using the box shadow property. So 0 pixel, 2 pixel, and the blurriness is going to be 4 pixel. Then I will be here using the RGBA function, which is going to be 0, 0, 0, and the alpha is going to be 0.1. Now you can see it has the box shadow to this particular container. Alright, the next thing is I will be here specifying the width property, which is going to be 400 pixel. Now you can see the width of the container is changed. Now it's time to specify the code for the H2 element. So selecting the H2 selector. Instead of that, first I'm going to change the font, which is going to be 1.5 RAM units. And after that, I will be specifying the margin bottom property, which is going to be 1 RAM unit. And then I will be providing here the color property to change the color for the heading, which is going to be 3498 dp, which will be gives us a blue color. So now you can see the heading color is actually changed to blue. The next thing is it's time to specify the code for the form element. So selecting the form selector, instead of the form, first I'm going to set the display to flex, and after that I will be selecting the flex direction to column. If I do that, now you can see each and every element inside the form is actually gets this particular properties, which is like the direction is changed in a column like structure. Now after that, it's time to specify the code for this message element. That is actually our input element. So you can see it's having an ID and also the class is message. So I'm going to style.css. So here I will be selecting the message class selector, and after that I'm going to start its body. Instead of that, first I'm going to select the padding. So padding is going to be like 0.5 RAM units. Then I will be here using the margin bottom property, which is going to be like 1 RAM units. Alright, and after that, here I'm going to provide the border. So we need a border. So border is going to 1 pixel, solid border, and the color of the border is going to be like D1, D1, D1. If I control save it, now you can see the color of the border is also changed. The next property that we want is actually the border radius, because we want some rounded corners. So for that, I will be here providing the 5 pixel border. And then I will be here using the font size property, which is going to be like 1 RAM units. And then The next property that I want is the outline is going to be none. Control save it. Now you can see the style of the entire input element is actually changed. The next thing is we need to actually style this submit button. So here I will be selecting this submit. So submit button, and then to start its body, again we need another submit. So this one is for the pseudo element classes because we want to apply a hover effect to the button. Instead of that, I will be changing the background color, which is going to like 2980, then be 9. And then it's time to specify the code inside the button. So the first thing is we need to apply the font size property, which is going to be like 1 rem units. Right, if I save it, now you can see the font of the button is actually changed. Then I want to apply the padding, which is going to like 0.5 rem units from all sides. And then I will be here using the border. So border we want to display none because we don't want any border to our button. Then to get the rounded corners, here I will be using the border radius property. Then cursor is going to be pointer. And then I will be here using the background color, which is going to like 3, 4, and 98 dp. So this will be the button color. And after that, I will be changing the color. Note clip is going to be color property. So color will be using here a pure white color. Now I can see the color of the button is actually changed. Alright, then I will be here using the transition property so that there is a smooth transition between the background color. So you can see this is our background color property, and then I will be here providing the duration, which is going to be 0.3 s. Then this is going to be ease. If I hover over the button, then you can see now the color of the button is changed. The next thing is we want to style this particular message elements. So there are two types of message element. The first is the invalid message. If I come back to this particular, so this is our invalid message. After some time it gets disappeared. That is because of the JavaScript. And then if we get any message and if I click on it, then we get this successful message. Alright. So that is the reason we need to write two style code. So the first I will be writing the invalid one. So here I will be using the invalid, and this is going to be like invalid message class name. So if I come back to the index.html, so this is the invalid message paragraph element. So we will be writing the style for this one first. So the first property that we want is the background color property. So we want to display the background to a red color. So here I will be using this particular color code. Now you can see the color of the invalid message is actually changed to red. Then I want some border radius. So border radius is going to be 5 pixel. Now PC is going to be 5 pixel. Then there is a padding property. So padding is actually from all sides is going to be like 0.2 rem units. And after that I want a color property which is going to be like white color. Right, and then I will be here using the margin top property which is going to be like 5 pixel. So you can see now the invalid message is actually changed, but we want to display this message only when there is an invalid input inside the input type, which is this particular one. Enter a message. So for that we need to here use the display to none. Control save it. Now you can see the invalid message is actually disappeared from the container. The next thing is we need to write the code for the message content, which is the success message content. When there is a valid input, we want to display that particular message inside this particular paragraph container. So first I'm going to copy the class name, which is message content. Coming back to the style.css again, because it is a class selector, again I'm repeating just for the revision purpose. So we want to use a dot operator and then the name of the class and then the name of the selector, and then we need to start its block of the code. Instead of that, first I'm going to specify the size property, which is going to be 1.2 rem units. Then we need to specify the margin top property, which is going to be 10 pixel. And then we need to define the color, which is going to be hash symbol 2ECC171. So here I'm going to specify the hash character. If I save it, then you can see right now you can't see anything because there is nothing is present inside the paragraph container. So this is the message. Control save it. Now you can see the final message will be look like this if there is a valid input entered inside this particular input type. Okay, so that marks the completion of the code for the CSS part for this particular write a message application. So in the next part, we're going to start with the JavaScript part of the project. So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part for the project, which is write a message application. So for that, we need to use the script.js file. And inside of that, first we need to create the two functions. The first function is going to display the valid message. The second function is going to display the invalid message. So first I'm going to create a function by using the small case typing, which is a function keyword. Then I'm going to name my function as show message content. And then we need to start the block of the code for this particular function. Now this function is going to accept a parameter, which is actually a message, which is actually a group of strings. So whatever we will write like this, what is this, it's going to accept by this particular function. So we're going to pass the argument to this particular function when we are calling it. So according to this particular value, we want to display that particular data inside the paragraph element, which is a valid paragraph element, that is this particular one, which is a message content. So we need to fetch the ID of this message content into the variable. Okay, so for that, here we need to create a variable of type const, and I'm going to name this as message content, right? And then we are going to set it to document dot query selector, because it is actually a class selector and also a single selector. So that is the reason I'm going to here specify the query selector. Then we need to specify the dot, because it is actually a query selector function. So we need to define the entire thing regarding the selector. Then I'm going to copy this particular selector name and coming back to the script.js again, and here I will be pasting the name of the selector. Now we get the reference to this particular UI element, means we actually bind this paragraph element to our JavaScript with this particular variable. And after that, we want to update the text content of this message content. So here I will be typing the message content dot text content property. So we are going to set it to a template string, which is a key present at the top of your tab key. So this is the template string that we are going to use here. And instead of that, I will be passing the variable message. So we want to display the message inside the double quotes, and then I will be here using a dollar sign, then the pair of curly brackets. Instead of that, I will be passing the argument, which is message, which is this particular one. Then I need to concatenate with this particular thing, which is your message is delivered. If I come back to your view.word wrap, then you will see everything in just only one part of this particular view window of the Visual Studio Code. So that marks the completion of the code for this particular function, which will show the valid message. Now similarly, we need to create another function that will show the invalid message. So this is going to have a name which is called invalid message. And then this message function is not going to accept any parameter. So we need to here simply create a variable const invalid message. This is going to equal to document dot query selector. So we need to just simply here provide the selector name, which is invalid message. So here we need to specify the dot as well, and then to pass the invalid message name inside the query selector function. After that, we need to update the style of the invalid selector, means the invalid message class. Inside the CSS, we have set the invalid message to display none. So we need to set it to block. So here we need to update the CSS of this particular invalid message, because right now we have the reference to this particular element, that is this one, inside this particular variable. So with the use of the variable, we can actually change the style of this particular one. So here we need to type the style dot, not computer style, it is actually the auto suggestion of the Visual Studio Code. So here I'm going to simply set the display is equal to block. Okay, so we simply did it here, but we actually update the style. And after setting the display to block, we need to here call a set timeout function, because after some time we need to change the state of the application again back to this particular one. All right, because once we display the, just like if I click here, you can see please enter a message, and after a couple of time it's get disappeared, means the show invalid function does what? It's again set the display of this invalid message to none. So for that, we need to here use the set timeout function. So set timeout function. Then here we need to pass an arrow function. Inside of that, we need to pass a callback. So it is going to be an anonymous arrow function callback. All right. And here we need to simply use the invalid message dot style dot display is equal to, and here again we need to set it to none. Okay, so once we did that, so here we need to also specify the time. So we want after 2 seconds to set the display of the invalid message to none again. Okay, now we have created all of these two functions that will be used to display the valid and invalid message. Now we need to get the reference of this input type. So whatever we will type, we just simply need to pass it to the show message function when we have a valid data inside this input type, and when there is an invalid input, we need to simply call this particular one. So we are going to do this particular step here. So first, here again I need to create a function, and then I will be actually calling this function as onSubmit function, or I can say that onSubmit form. Inside of this particular one, we want to listen to an event, so it is going to be an event. And then first I need to do what? Because it is a form, so whenever we click on submit, the data will be sent it to the URL, because the data inside the form, if you are familiar with the HTML, the form data will be handled in two cases, means by either by using post and get. So we want to prevent that one. So here I will be using the e dot, which is the argument that we have passed to this particular one, e dot prevent default. So it is going to be like e dot prevent default. Okay, so this will be the function that we need to pass here. Okay, which will actually prevent the data from being submitting on the URL on click of the button. And after that, here we need to get the reference. So it is like message input is equal to, and then here we need to pass the document dot query selector, and then we need to pass the values, which is dot message. All right, and after that, const message is going to equal to message, that is message. So we need to initialize with the message input dot value dot, not this one, we need to use the trim function. So we want to trim the value of this particular input type before and after, if there is any space or invalid space will be existed. So that is the reason we have called here a trim function. Now we get the message. So we need to check the condition according to this particular variable value, because we have get the value from this input type and initialize it to this message input, and after that we have applied a trim function to this particular message input. Okay, and then here we want to use the conditions, which is if message is equals to empty one. So here we are actually using the triple equal to sign. Then we need to call the show invalid message, because there is a empty thing existed inside this particular input type. So that is the reason we need to call here show invalid input. In the else block, we need to call a valid function. So here I will be passing the show message content, and also we need to pass this message variable as a parameter to this particular function. So here I will be passing the message. Now the value of this input type is actually present inside this particular variable, that will be passed to this particular function, and then value will be passed here as the argument is actually received here, and then the rest of the procedure will be done by these particular lines of the code. Okay, and after showing the message, we need to simply set this particular input type to empty again, so that we can add a new data inside of that input type. So for that, here we need to use the message input dot value, because it is an input type, so we have a value property. We need to set it to empty again. If I control save it and if I enter anything, nothing will be happen, because we need to call this particular function as well. All right, so here after the end of this on submit form function, I will be here using a immediate invoked function expression feature of the JavaScript. So here I will be using the round of curly brackets. All right, instead of that I will be passing the function keyword, then the round brackets, and then we need to start the body of the function, and then we need to call this particular function here and then pass the terminator. Instead of that, I will be actually getting the ID of, so const form is equal to document dot query selector. Then we need to define the type of the selector. So we have specified ID to our form element. If I come back here, so you can see we have the ID form. So simply coming back to the script.js again. So here we need to define the type of the selector. So it is ID selector. So we need to specify the hash symbol, and then we need to type the name of the selector, which is actually form. Okay, and then we need to here listen to the form event. So add event listener. So we want to listen to the on submit event of the form. So here we need to pass this submit, because we want to listen to the submit event of the form element, and the callback that we want to pass here is going to be the on submit callback, that is this particular one, on submit form callback. So we need to pass this particular callback. So now if I control save it, and if I enter here any text, click on submit, you can see what is this, your message is delivered. And if I enter here new values, and if I click on it, new your message is delivered. If I refresh it and if I pass an invalid input, click on submit, then you can say please enter a message, and after a couple of time, means after 2 seconds, it's going to disappear. So now our application is completely working. So if you like this module, then leave your review, because your review helps me to create more awesome contents. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.